My name is Hannah Blake, and I became a bride only hours before I almost became a missing person. I was sitting on the edge of the bed in the most beautiful hotel suite I had ever seen. White rose petals were scattered across the sheets. Soft golden lights glowed from the lamps, and the gentle music of our favorite love song drifted in from the living room. I should have been the happiest woman alive. I had just married Ryan Blackwood, the man I loved more than anything in the world. I was an orphan, a preschool teacher with no family, no wealth, no powerful name. And now I was suddenly the wife of one of the most powerful young businessmen in Westlake, California. I was still trying to let that reality sink in when Ryan walked out onto the balcony with his phone. I saw him through the glass door. His posture changed instantly. His shoulders tightened. His voice dropped low. I could not hear what he was saying, but I knew something was wrong. 2 minutes later, he was still standing there, staring into the darkness with his phone pressed to his ear like he was being held hostage by whoever was on the other side. Then suddenly, the door behind me burst open. Sophie, Ryan's sister, rushed into the room. Her face was white. Her eyes were wide with terror. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold what she was carrying. "Hannah," she whispered. Before I could answer, she shoved something heavy into my hands. It was a thick bundle of cash held together by a rubber band. I froze. Her voice dropped to a broken whisper. "Hannah, take this, go to the back door. Run now." My heart slammed against my ribs. Run where? Why before? I could ask anything. I heard footsteps on the balcony. Sophie grabbed my wrist. "Please, Hannah. If you stay here, your life will be over." I looked at the money in my hands, and then at her terrified face. And in that moment, I knew. My wedding night was not the beginning of a fairy tale. It was the beginning of a nightmare. Just hours earlier, I had believed I was the luckiest woman alive. Ryan Blackwood was not just handsome and successful. He was gentle in a way that felt rare. He listened when I spoke. He remembered small details about me. He never made me feel small. When I told him I was an orphan, he did not pity me. He simply said, "Then we will build our own family." That was how he won my heart. When his powerful family resisted our relationship, he stood in front of them and said, "If Hannah is not accepted, then I will walk away." I believed that meant he was brave. The Blackwood family lived in a mansion by the lake, guarded by iron gates and silent security guards. Gregory Blackwood. Ryan father was the chairman of a massive construction empire. His eyes were sharp and cold, like a man who was always measuring how much power someone had. Margaret, his wife, was elegant and quiet. She smiled politely, but never warmly. And Sophie, their daughter, moved like a shadow. Always careful, always afraid to speak too loudly. I thought they were just a strict, wealthy family. I never imagined they were hiding something far worse. When Ryan stepped back into the room after that phone call, he looked calm again, almost too calm. "Who was that?" I asked gently. "Just business," he said, with a soft smile pulling me close. Tonight is about us, but his hands were tight on my shoulders, and his eyes were not smiling. I smiled back because that is what a new wife does. Even though every instinct in my body was screaming that something was very wrong. Behind his warm voice, I could feel fear. And behind the walls of that beautiful mansion, I could feel something dark waiting to surface. The next morning, sunlight filled the room like nothing bad had ever happened. Ryan was already awake, making breakfast downstairs. The smell of eggs and coffee drifted through the house. He smiled when he saw me like a perfect husband. "Did you sleep well?" he asked. I nodded, even though I had barely closed my eyes. Every sound, every shadow, every memory of Sophie's trembling voice had kept me awake. We sat at the long dining table together in silence. Then Margaret walked in, wearing a silk robe. Her smile was gentle, but her eyes were sharp. "Good morning, Hannah," she said. "I hope you had a pleasant first night in our home." Before I could answer, she turned to Ryan. "Sophie came home last night with swollen eyes. She would not tell me what was wrong." My heart skipped. Ryan did not look at me. "She was just being dramatic," he said. "She always is." Margaret nodded, but she was watching me, not him. Then Gregory entered the room, carrying a newspaper like a shield. He did not greet me. He did not acknowledge me. It was like I was invisible. That was when I understood this family was pretending nothing had happened, and pretending was their most dangerous weapon. When Ryan left for work, I knew I could not stay quiet. I needed to know what Sophie was trying to save me from. Because no one runs from love unless love has already become a trap. As soon as Ryan left the house, I went straight upstairs to Sophie's room. I knocked once. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. Slowly, I turned the handle. The room was empty, but her bed was unmade and her desk was covered with scattered books. On top of the desk was a small notebook left open. I knew I should not read it, but fear is louder than manners. I stepped closer. The pages were filled with Sophie's, handwriting uneven and shaky, like she had been crying while writing. The first line I saw made my blood run cold. "Dad knows what he did." Another line said, "Ryan saw everything." Then further down, "I cannot let Hannah suffer the same fate." My knees felt weak. What fate, I kept reading. "If Dad finds out I warned her, he will destroy me. But I would rather be punished than let Hannah walk into the same nightmare." Tears blurred my vision. This was not a prank. This was a warning. Just then, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I quickly closed the notebook and put it back exactly where it was. My heart was pounding. I had just stepped into something far bigger than I could understand. But now there was no turning back. Whatever Gregory Blackwood had done, whatever Ryan was hiding, it was powerful enough to make his own sister beg me to run, and that meant my life was already in danger. I went back to my room and locked the door. The bundle of cash Sophie had given me was still hidden under the mattress. For the first time, I understood what it really was. Not escape money, but a warning. I opened my laptop and typed in Blackwood Group article after article, praised Gregory Blackwood as a visionary leader and generous philanthropist. Everything looked too perfect, so I changed my search. Blackwood construction accident. Riverside Heights collapse. After scrolling for several minutes, I found a forgotten blog. The title stopped my breath. "The Truth Buried at Riverside Heights." The writer claimed a scaffolding collapse had killed workers years ago, but the story had been erased. Families were paid, records were changed, reporters were silenced. Then I read a comment that made my hands shake. The site supervisor that day was the chairman's son, Ryan. The room felt suddenly very small. This was not just a family secret. This was a crime that had been hidden behind money and power, and I had married into the middle of it. My phone rang from an unknown number. I almost did not answer, but something in my chest told me I had to. "Hannah." A quiet voice said, "It is Margaret. Do not let anyone know I called you. Are you alone?" I locked my bedroom door before speaking. "Yes." "We need to meet," she whispered. "There is something you must know." 30 minutes later, I was sitting across from her in a small coffee shop by the lake. She wore dark glasses and kept looking over her shoulder. Her hands were shaking. Gregory knows about the Riverside Heights investigation. She said, he is afraid. Then she looked straight at me. Hannah, your marriage was rushed for a reason. Gregory believes if Ryan has a wife and a future, he will stay silent. You were chosen because you had no powerful family to protect you. I felt like the ground dropped away. He is using me. Margaret nodded. Ryan did see what happened at Riverside Heights. He tried to stop his father, but Gregory broke him. He made him believe silence was the only way to survive. Margaret leaned forward. If you stay here, Gregory will never let you be free. Sophie tried to save you. Now I am begging you too. Run. I returned to the mansion with my heart heavy, but my mind clear. Running would save only me. Staying might save everyone. I went to Sophie's room that night and closed the door behind me. I know everything I told her. Your mom told me. Her eyes filled with tears. I was so scared, she whispered. You were brave. I said, but now I need your help. We have to find proof. Something your father cannot erase. Sophie hesitated but then nodded. There is a spare key to his study hidden in the memorial room. No one goes there at night. That was our only chance. For the first time since the wedding, Sophie stood a little taller, maybe because for once, fear was no longer stronger than truth. Near midnight, the mansion was quiet. Sophie led me down a narrow hallway to a small memorial room filled with old photographs and dim lights. She reached beneath the altar and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was a single metal key. We moved carefully toward Gregory's study. Every step sounded too loud. The door opened with a soft click. Inside, the air smelled of leather and smoke. File cabinets lined the walls. A heavy safe stood in the corner. I tried to open it, but it was locked. My chest tightened. Then I saw the computer on his desk. The screen asked for a password. I thought about Gregory and what mattered most to him, his pride. I typed the year he had won his biggest industry award. The screen unlocked. There was a folder marked RH Riverside Heights. Inside was a single video. My hands shook as I pressed play. The footage showed the scaffolding collapsing, workers screaming, and Gregory standing there calmly on the phone. His voice was clear. Remove everything. No witnesses. I copied the file to a USB drive. This was the truth they had buried, and now I was holding it. A car engine cut through the silence outside. Sophie and I froze. Headlights flashed across the windows. Gregory was back. We rushed out of the study and locked Sophie's bedroom door behind us. Footsteps moved through the house, slow and heavy. Then Gregory's voice echoed down the hall. Who was in my office? The door handle turned. Hannah, opened this door. Ryan's voice followed, trying to calm him. Dad, there is no problem. But Gregory was not listening. He burst inside. His eyes went straight to me. What did you take? I said nothing. He stepped closer. Where is the drive? Before I could answer, Sophie stepped in front of me. It was me. She said I was curious. Gregory face twisted. You think you can lie to me? He raised his hand and struck her. Sophie fell to the floor. Ryan rushed forward. That was when I knew this had gone beyond fear. This was now violence. And Gregory would not stop. Gregory stared at Sophie on the floor and then slowly pulled out his phone. I warned you all, he said. He made a short call. Send them now. Ryan looked at him in disbelief. Dad, stop this. Gregory smiled. You should have stayed obedient. A few minutes later, 2 men in dark suits entered the house. They did not speak. They did not smile. They stood waiting for instructions. Margaret appeared at the top of the stairs. Her voice was shaking, but firm. If you hurt them, I will go to the police. Gregory laughed. You would never. She held up a small USB drive. I already copied everything. For the first time, Gregory looked uncertain. His control was cracking. And when a man like him loses control, he becomes dangerous. Gregory shouted for the men to grab us. Ryan moved first. He stepped in front of me and Sophie. "Go," he yelled. Margaret grabbed Sophie's hand and pulled her toward the back door. I ran after them. Behind us, furniture crashed and voices shouted. The back gate was locked. "Climb," Margaret said, pointing to a tree near the wall. Sophie went first, then Margaret. When I tried to follow, someone grabbed my ankle. I fell hard before I could scream. Ryan tackled the man. "Go." "Hannah," he shouted. I climbed over the wall and dropped onto the other side. I heard Ryan cry out, but Margaret pulled me away. "We have to get help," she said. "That is how we save him." We ran into the darkness, not knowing if Ryan was alive, only knowing that stopping now meant losing everything. We found a passing taxi on the empty road and told the driver to take us straight to the police station. Margaret and I handed over both USB drives to the officer on duty. He watched the video in silence. His expression changed. Within minutes, calls were made and sirens filled the night. "They are going to the Blackwood mansion now." The officer said, "Your husband is being treated as a hostage." Those words made my chest tighten. We waited in a small room, holding hands, not speaking. Every second felt heavy. After what felt like forever, an officer came back. Gregory Blackwood, and the two men are in custody. "Ryan, Blackwood has been found injured but alive." Relief washed through me so fast I could barely breathe. We went straight to the hospital. Ryan was lying in a bed with bandages on his head. He looked at me and smiled weakly. "Are you safe?" he asked. I nodded. And for the first time since our wedding night, I felt like we might survive this. Just when we thought it was over. Gregory lawyers tried to claim he was not mentally stable. They wanted him sent to a hospital instead of prison. Our lawyer said we needed proof that everything he did was planned. Margaret remembered something. Gregory kept a black leather journal hidden behind his bookshelf. With police permission, we returned to the mansion. The house felt empty and cold. Margaret pressed a hidden latch and a small compartment opened. Inside was the journal. Every page was filled with Gregory handwriting. He had written about cutting costs, silencing families, paying officials. Then I saw a line that made my stomach turn. "Hannah Blake is the perfect pawn." And on the final page, "If all fails, use insanity defense. I have prepared the records." This was not madness. This was strategy. We handed the journal to the authorities. Gregory no longer had a way out. The courtroom was silent as the judge read the charges. Fraud, bribery, obstruction of justice, and finally, murder. Gregory Blackwood sat stiff in his chair. For the first time, he looked small. When the verdict was announced, I felt Ryan body shake beside me. Guilty on all counts. Sentenced to life in prison. Margaret covered her face. Sophie held her hand. Ryan stared at the floor. I held his arm. Gregory was led away without looking back. The man who had controlled everything now had nothing. Outside, rain began to fall. It felt like the world was washing away years of lies. Justice had finally caught him. The mansion was sold. The company was gone. The Blackwood name no longer opened doors. But for the first time, it did not feel like a prison. Ryan took small construction jobs using only his own hands. Sophie went back to school. Margaret started a small garden behind our rented home. I opened a free preschool class for children whose parents could not afford one. We used what little money we had to create a small scholarship fund in the names of the workers who died at Riverside Heights. It was not a grand gesture, but it was honest. Slowly, people stopped looking at us with fear and started seeing us as people, not shadows of Gregory Blackwood. We were building something new, something clean, something real. One evening, as the sun went down, Ryan took my hand and led me into the small garden. He knelt in front of me, holding a simple ring he had made himself. "Hannah," he said, "I gave you a life built on lies. I want to give you one, built on truth. Will you marry me again?" I could not speak. I only nodded. We did not need a grand ceremony. We had already survived fire. If this story touched you, remember this: silence protects abuse. Courage breaks it. If you believe that hit, share this story. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were Hannah?